Hey everybody, we're going to be doing an introduction on automatic transmissions. Let's go ahead and get started. All right, so what our focus is going to be on is explaining the basic purpose of the transmission. Then we're going to start identifying the difference between a manual and an automatic transmission. And then we're going to describe the difference between automatic transmissions and automatic transaxles and identify major automatic transmission and transaxle components. And then we're going to explain the basic operation of the automatic transmission or the transaxle. We'll trace the development of modern automatic transmissions and transaxles. All right, so the purpose of transmission is to transmit power, disconnect the engine from the drive axles, reverse direction of power flow, multiply engine torque, and simply stated, the transmission modifies engine torque and speed to match the vehicle needs. The gear ratio is a relationship of the speed of the input shaft to the speed of the output shaft. Transmission uses a set of at least 2 gears that cause an output shaft speed to be lower than the input shaft speed, known as a reduction gear. So here is a reduction gear. So we've got the power going in. Notice it's a smaller gear. And then we have a power going out. Then we have the power going in, so we have most modern transmissions have at least 4 forward gears. Direct drive gear, input and output shaft turn at the same speed. Overdrive gear, the output shaft turns faster than the input shaft and allows the engine to turn at relatively low speeds, giving better fuel economy. So manual and automatic transmission similarities, of course, keep the engine from stalling when the vehicle stops. Use gears and shafts to obtain different ratios and reverse direction of the actual vehicle itself. The manual transmission differences engage and disengage the engine, reverse direction, changing the gear ratios to match the actual. That's pretty much what I said a minute ago, but kind of repeating that. And transmission function, this is kind of another little chart that you can actually use. So transmission function is engage and disengage gear drive wheels. Driver operates a clutch. And then on an automatic transmission, the fluid coupling or torque converter actually does that. Instead of you having to put in a clutch, you're actually going to just sit there with it in gear. Reverse direction, sliding gears does this. And then we have on our automatic transmission, we have a planetary gear set. Changing gear ratios to match the vehicle's speed. We have a sliding gear operated by the driver. And then we have planetary gears operated by a hydraulic control system in the automatics. So rear-wheel drive vehicles, we've probably seen something like this in your introductory classes, and this is one also. So they see, it transfers power. So the wheel-wheel drive goes to the rear wheels, and where we go into front-wheel drive, what will come up right next is we're going to actually transfer power from the front wheels. And like I was saying, front-wheel drive, it's with a transaxle. It could be a front wheel drive with an engine actually going forward instead of being sideways. It could be forward also. And here on my rear of my actual vehicle here, I have a dead axle, as they call it a lot of times, and we just have the steering and everything going on up front. So transmit and transaxle, kind of comparing them, the two of them, the arrangement of parts, differential and a final drive assembly are an integral part of the transaxle instead of having two pieces, which I'll show you a diagram in just a little bit here. But the axle have one output shaft for each wheel versus one shaft going up to the back on a rear-wheel drive vehicle. And the advantage of transaxles are they reduce weight and increased fuel economy. And then we have the four-wheel drive. The transfer case attached to the rear of the transmission, and the case splits the power to the front wheels and also to the rear wheels. So depending how it's set up. And also there is what they call all-wheel drive too. So where it's, all driving at the same, there's no really disconnect like on some of your four-wheel drives do. Automatic transmissions, kind of started off back like in 1938 on an Oldsmobile, which is widely considered the first car with an automatic transmission. And improvements included torque converters, simplified gear train, and an aluminum case. First transmissions were more of a cast iron type setup, and it wasn't until later they went into aluminum. Lockup converter, torque converters, and transaxles and electronic controls actually continue to kind of help make the automatic transmission even better. So here's like one of, kind of showing a modern automatic transmission right here. So we've got our torque converter going on back. We also could have a torque converter with a clutch assembly, or I should say, this is the oil pump up front. And then we have a set of clutches and gears going all the way back, also your planetaries also. And then we have some electronics down into the pan right here. And the automatic transmission and transaxle components are part, we have fluid coupling device, which is our torque converter. We have an input and an output shafts. We have planetary gears. We have holding members that hold the clutch assemblies. And then we have the casting and housings, oil pan, bushings and bearings. We have hydraulic pump and pressure regulators, hydraulic control systems, gaskets and seals. We have manual linkage and throttle linkage on some of the early models. And then we have transmission fluid, of course, transmission fluid cooler because it gets very hot. And then we have a transmission fluid filter that needs to be serviced. So here, the fluid coupling is a fluid filled unit. Contains two sets of blades, like impellers. I'm going to show you a screenshot in just a few minutes here. The impeller driven by the engine, and then the turbine connected to the output shaft. The power is transmitted from the impeller to the turbine through the fluid. So if you were to take and kind of split the torque converter apart, you would have a driven and a drive type setup where you have two fans. So if you were thinking of like two fans that you had for cooling your yourself in your house, if you can try this sometime. Just go ahead and take a fan and another fan. Of course, motorized ones that you plug into the wall, or you can actually take just battery operated ones too. And you take one fan and you have that one on where you turn the other one off, and then watch as you get closer to it, you'll start moving that other impeller. So that propeller actually will turn because of the airflow going across. Instead of air, we're actually using fluid to do it. So this is what part of what transmission fluid is used for. And then the torque converter, this is the design, kind of like this design of the torque converter. So here's where we actually have parts to it. We have the torque converter replaces that fluid coupling in the 60s, has an impeller and a turbine, plus a stator to direct the fluid. The input and the output shafts, you can see the input shaft right here, and then their output shaft. Notice they're not connected because it's going to be, the connection is going to be through the different clutches and gears and planetaries and such that you have. This is the planetary gear sets. You'll have several. If you know, there are a few transmissions without planetaries in them, but it's more common to have planetaries. The planetary assembly, kind of they talk. Why do they call it the planetaries? If you look at it, they kind of look like a planet. And I have a slide coming up next where you can actually see what I mean. But you'll see how this connection helps with reversing gears and making things happen for us. So here is a planetary, like I was saying, so it looks like the sun, and then you have the different planets going around in orbit around it. That's why they call it a planetary. And this is kind of courtesy of General Motors right here. Then we have our holding members. This is going to be like your bands and your clutches in place, so we can actually change gears as we go along. And then, of course, your case, this is part of the assembly. So this is kind of like your main piece that everything fits down into. And then you have other housings. You might have a bell housing, which would be the one right up front. You might have a tail housing. Sometimes the whole case is all in one piece too. And then we have our oil pans. So this is one style. This is going to be a plastic style. It's a form of plastic, I should put it that way. And then we have a metal pan right down here. And then bushings to support things, bearings to support things also. This is could be roller, ball bearings. We have different bushings in place in different sizes. And then our hydraulic pump is going to be pretty much up front. You may have an auxiliary type of pump also on some of your hybrids where it'll be electric. So it'll actually, it'll keep it in gear when the engine goes to off mode and you're at a stop sign. So the pump pulls just like in an engine. It'll pull your fluid up into the pump assembly, and there's different styles, which we'll be going over soon. And it pulls it up from the filters and from the sump or from the pan, and then it goes through a screen assembly or a filter to make sure we don't get any debris into our pump itself. And it goes out to the system through the outlet. And because we can just keep on magnifying and magnifying and magnifying fluid, in other words, increasing, we want to make sure we have a certain pressure and it bleeds off. So this is a pressure regulator. And then we have a hydraulic system where we have different controls going on. Depending on the type of transmission, it may be totally electronically controlled, or it may be hydraulically mechanically controlled. Where the old ones, we had governors and accumulators and something like that. And modulator valves, now we're going more and more electronic. So we have the electronic assembly that's actually controlling the shifts. And then you've got your gaskets and seals to keep everything, all the fluid in, to keep the fluid from spilling out, and also making those sealing connections between the different parts inside the transmission. And then we have a seal. There's different types of seals out there. The seal actually, again, prevents fluid, assists in preventing fluid from going out. And our linkage, more and more are going to electronic in gear, whereas the older systems you would need to actually mechanically shift with a lever or a lever. Some of them still do that lever kind of operation. Some are just to dial it into gear. Part of the old manual linkage, of course, was like your throttle controls that were out there, and it would be part of that linkage assembly for, mechanically shifting down a gear to the throttle also. And of course, our transmission fluid. This is what is supplied to make the hydraulic system work. Also, I do want to point out that all fluids are not the same. I have another lecture on transmission fluids. You want to make sure you see that one, because that's going to give you a little insight of why one transmission takes this type of fluid while this one takes another type of fluid. So we want to make sure we cover that also. And of course, the transmission gets very, very hot. The fluid gets very, very hot, and it will break down if it's not taking some of the heat off of it. So we have different types of transmission fluid coolers. And filters, depending on different types of filters, they can be snapped on, or they might have a set of screws to hold them in place also. So you want this is a serviceable item. I do want to say something also about the automatic transmissions as far as the parking. When you put it into park, doesn't mean it's supposed to keep it from moving. That's just to put the transmission in park. A few things: you don't want to slam the transmission in park. You want to allow it to come to a stop, then put it in the park, and always remember to put your set your parking brake. If you're on a downward, incline or a decline, and then you put it just in the park, that little bitty lever, which is not very big, not very meaty to it, it can actually brake like this one says done right here. And then the vehicle just keeps on going. Automatic transmissions, again, the operation, to drive and reverse, we have different holding members that actually apply into the different gears. The planetaries help with the reverse and different gear sets. That impeller and the actual turbine are all involved in this, and also the hydraulic system itself too. So there are alternate types of transmissions. Like I kind of mentioned a minute ago, they may have a set of another electric pump to keep it fully full of fluid, so it'll hold it in, that it keeps it into gear. There may be different types of instead of a set of clutches and all, we may just have one big sun gear. It can actually change in speed. There's different ways of doing transmissions. Some actually have a belt to them, like some of the CVTs that are out there. And again, like I said before, they're getting to where they're electronically shifted instead of manually shifted into gear. And then also we have dual clutch transmissions also. So this, again, was just kind of an introduction on different, the automatic transmission systems. I'll be putting more together as we go along. And I want to make sure that, you keep up to date on the different videos that I do post. Please like and subscribe. And definitely, you'll be one of the first to get the newer stuff coming out. Until next time, folks, thank you for your time, and I'll be talking to you soon. Bye for now.